everyone, and welcome to I Never Knew Inc. podcast with Lifecoach Maureen. So I'm super excited today because I have my first guest episode, and my guest is someone that there's a really cool backstory. She makes me laugh. She's an amazing person. And I'm going to give you a little background on who she is and how we know one another. So it's interesting. You meet friends in school and you think, you hope they're lifelong friends, but in life, people are, I like to say, like a train ride. Some people hop off, some people go all the way to the end, some people get left at the train station. So my next guest is Laura Mann, and she is an old school friend of mine from high school. So we met when we were freshmen in high school, and we joined the drama club together because we are drama girls. And we maintained our friendship even after high school. We were BFFs. We had another friend, a male friend, who was one of our three musketeers, and there was just the three of us. Well, after I got married and pregnant and moved to Germany, Laura and I still kept in contact, and we even stayed with her in her house with her husband in Camarillo, California, on our way to moving to Monterey. And so we maintained our friendship until one day something just happened and we stopped. So I'm going to leave the story there, and I'm going to introduce you to her. So she's an Arizona native. She has two adult children who she raised as a single parent. She had a 16-year marriage, and it wasn't a healthy one. And this is what our podcast is about, is talking about our experiences to help others. And we're going to get into that. And she's currently a changed woman, very happy. She met her Prince Charming really like a year ago. Actually, she knew him, but then healed and then really manifested this beautiful relationship that she has. So long-winded introduction there. Welcome, Laura Mann. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I am so happy to have you on. As you know, you're my very first guest, and who better than Laura to be my first guest?
Exciting. I'm excited.
Yay! So when you heard about the concept of the podcast and how I explained that we're going to talk about our stories, and you reached out and said, I want to be on there, what is the first thing that popped into your mind that you think your story would help others if they're struggling during the same thing that you're going through? So what is the thing that stood out for you?
I think for individuals to feel like they're not taking a difficult journey alone. There's others that have taken difficult journeys or are on that difficult journey, and that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. So, in other words, we all go through crap, right? We all go through these difficult moments. And it's really cool I always think of it like kind of a medical diagnosis. Like you have all these symptoms, you don't know where to turn. And all of a sudden, someone reaches out and goes, hey, I have that same thing. And there's sort of this relief that someone understands what you're feeling. Does that sound pretty close to what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Love it. Love it. So tell me a moment in your life or the most profound sort of turning point. Maybe you didn't change right away, but it was this moment that stands out about your life and your experience. Let's start with your story. Let's start with what early on. Was it childhood? Was it when you got married? Was it self-confidence? Tell me your biggest struggle and when it started.
Gosh, I would probably say, I would probably say self-confidence. That has been a source of contention for me, I would say the majority of my entire life, even when I was very, very young. I never felt um I never felt like I met the mold of what everybody else was. I struggled with my weight. I um wasn't always the smartest in the group or, whatever, but I was surrounded by a lot of really incredible people my whole life. And I think that kind of manifested into my marriage. I lived with my mom up until the day I got married. Um, and the day after I was married, I moved to California. So I uprooted my entire life of everything I'd ever known. Um, Born and raised in the same town and house, and never had significant change. Um, so moved to California and lived there for about 15 years. Um, I would say the first 2 or 3 years of my marriage were pretty good. Had 2 children. They were about almost 6 years apart. But as my marriage developed, I realized that it wasn't a healthy marriage. I struggled with codependency, which I wasn't really familiar with at the time in my early 20s. And he wasn't a healthy man. He wasn't mentally healthy. He wasn't physically healthy. The longer we were married, the more tumultuous the marriage became. And so I finally had enough courage to decide to end that marriage. It was not an easy decision. I didn't have family support close to me. I didn't share a lot of my experiences in my marriage with my family. It was really emotionally abusive, at times physical. And it's just not something that it's almost shameful, which to me is very frustrating, because we should be able to share with those around us that love us the most the issues, the fears that you're going through. And I was just very ashamed of that. And so I had made a decision. It's either I end this marriage or live in a constant state of fear. And it wasn't just me, it was my children too. So I ended my marriage, which was not an easy decision to make. And unfortunately, instead of taking some time to kind of regroup and discover who I was, or what my self-worth was, or, what I could contribute to society on any level. I was a stay-at-home mom too. So I had not worked for about 10 years, 10, 12 years. So I immediately jumped into another relationship, and that relationship lasted 10 years. And again, very, very codependent on this individual who was not good for me. And ended that after 10 years. During that time, I dated, I was seeking a companion. And it was just, dating in your 40s is not a lot of fun. So, I dated, I made some bad choices during that time that weren't good for me. So I had decided I'm going to take a hiatus, because I need to figure out who I am. I need to learn to spend some time by myself and do things that I was uncomfortable with, and being comfortable with doing those uncomfortable things. So little things like going out to dinner by myself and sitting in a restaurant by myself, or going to events, community events, or even reunions or whatever, alone, and being comfortable being alone. And during this time, I'd had a few dates with a gentleman. They were good dates. We got along famously and had great conversation, but nothing ever really transpired. There was always a significant hiatus in between this time. So this individual had reached out to me about 2.5 years ago, and my first thought was, well, he must be single again, because I felt like every time he had reached out to me, he was single or I was a soft place to land. And so I said, well, okay, we'll give it a whirl. We'll go out to dinner or whatever. And it just seemed from the very beginning, it was a little different than the few times before that we had met. It just seemed more genuine, that he was more genuinely interested, wanted to have for our date have it be a great experience. And but during that time, during my hiatus, I did a lot of healing, and just kind of looked at myself a little bit. What is my self-worth? What do I want in my life? What am I not going to settle for? And I had written down in a little journal that I have things that I really wanted for myself, career-wise, for my children, and a partner. And I did that about 2 years prior to this last meeting with this gentleman. And so we went out and had a wonderful time, and conversation was very honest and very organic. And I knew at that point that I really liked him, and I had always really liked him. But I knew, with the history that we had talked about with each other, as he had not been in healthy relationships either, that I needed to let him drive the train, so to speak, and learn that who I was is genuinely who I was, and give him that time to trust that. And so I didn't reach out to him. I didn't text him first. I didn't make the calls first. I just let him take the initiative when he was ready. And it just transpired very organically for about 6 months. And then we became, I guess what you could say, official. And it has been the greatest relationship I've ever had. We are on the same page. We've never had a disagreement. We've never had an argument. And I've never in my life experienced a partner that is so incredibly supportive. And so that was a journey in itself, because I never had anybody I can trust 100%, that had my back 100%, that supported me 100%, and was fully embraced by not just my children, but my family as well. And literally living the fairy tale story. It's just been a beautiful journey, but it wasn't an easy one to get to where I'm at today. But I just didn't want to settle for something that felt good at the time that could potentially not be good for me down the road later. And I didn't. And this is what came to surface, and it's just been wonderful.
I love that. And what I hear is the reversal of the codependency and the no more settling and the deciding. And for anyone who listened to my very first episode where you meet me, you will see how, Laura, your story echoes my experience, so closely. So since this is about letting people know when you're at that lowest moment, what you can do to persevere, what was the lowest moment in that marriage to your first husband, your children's father? What was a moment where, like for me, I almost died. He had me on the ground. Doesn't mean I left then, but I know that it was a lowest moment, and I'm certain in my mind things were starting at least to become more aware that this is not good for me. So what was your moment in